On this edition of What's Cooking, I made a ravioli dish over cabbage and radicchio with eggplant medallions. And this is, I don't know why I've been on a cabbage kick lately. Maybe it's because it's March, but I really do enjoy the flavors you can get from cabbage and radicchio as you roast them and cook them different ways. So I've been having fun kind of experimenting, and this was a bit of an experimentation, but this is a vegetarian dish. Not vegan, although if you remove the dairy products that I'm going to use, which isn't a big part of this, you'll see that you can make it vegan as well. So we start by peeling some garlic. And I use the garlic in a couple of different applications, so I chop up quite a bit of it and set it aside pretty finely. And then some ginger, which I've really found that using ginger in conjunction with your garlic or onions in the as aromatics is, I really like the depth of flavor it provides. So I dice up the garlic as well finally, the ginger as well, and then chop an onion. And now we're going to make a little dressing for our roasted vegetables, which is fennel, coriander, caraway seed, red pepper, crushed black pepper, freshly ground, and some sea salt. And then we put that all together with some extra virgin olive oil and just kind of mix it up. And then add the juice of one lemon as well. And then that is pretty much ready. Going to use some of that in a saute pan, and then the rest of it's going to go over our vegetables that we end up roasting here. So there's our radicchio. Continuing on with our prep. I love radicchio. It's a real bitter tasting green. All right, I don't know if you call it a green, it's purple. But then here's our cabbage. And so I cut the cabbage into quarters, although I do cheat a little bit here and just create the quarters without using the center stalk, so I don't even have to remove that. You get a lot out of one cabbage. So preheat the oven to 425 so it's ready when we're ready to put the cabbage and radicchio in. And now we start to saute the cut sides of the cabbage, and we want to brown them up before we put them in the oven. And so I try to squeeze 4 of them in there, and then probably about 5 minutes, and then I'll flip it over. Look at that. Now I'll flip it over to the other side that has not been cut yet, or not been roasted, the other cut side that's not been roasted, and then about 5 minutes more, and then we're good to go. So that's what I'm talking about with the cabbage. I mean, it's kind of fun to take a cabbage and roast it down like that. It's amazing how the flavor changes. I mean, cabbage, just plain cabbage, is obviously very plain and bland, but once you start roasting it, it just evokes a little bit of sweetness. So once I remove the cabbage, on that same saute pan, I throw in my onions, and we start to let those cook down a little bit with the remaining spices, and actually some of that garlic in there is starting to burn, but I put a little more fresh garlic and ginger in with those onions and continue to cook it down. They're eventually going to go right on top of our cabbage before we put it in the oven. So as you can see, I also have some portobello, which now we're going to take the rest of that marinade that I made and kind of spread it over the rest of our vegetables, and including over the cabbage and radicchio as well. And then I'm going to drizzle a little balsamic over everything, which really goes well, especially with the radicchio and the mushrooms. Those are some nice big portobellos. Especially if you are a vegetarian or a vegan, you better love portobello mushrooms. So then I take the onion mixture that I sauteed and just kind of dump it on top. Get a little bit on everything. And then this is all going to go right into the oven for probably about 25-30 minutes. Now, get to work on the eggplant. Just slice up some medallions. I found a perfectly sized eggplant for this at Wegmans in the produce section, so figured we would fry them up like my grandma used to make. So we get a little egg wash mixture, and I got a little station for breading, half flour, half breadcrumbs, and I didn't season the eggplant directly, but I did season the flour and breadcrumbs with salt and pepper. And so then just make sure it's got a good coating, and then that'll go right into the frying pan. As you can see now, after about 3-4 minutes, flip them. Super crunchy, which is part of why I did this, because there's going to be so much cabbage, which has a little bit of crunch to it, but this eggplant provides a different crunch, like more of a potato chip type of crunch. So I also season it again while they're sauteing, and then take them out. And while they're still warm, I'll go ahead and grate a little bit of Parmesan Reggiano on top. Best part of doing this when it's warm is it will melt a little bit into that and stay on there. So once that's done, I set it aside, and we'll continue on here. Here's what our vegetables look like when they come out: the cabbage and the radicchio and the mushrooms. Nice and brown, just total different flavor profile than when they went in. And so now I bunch up all the cabbage and radicchio, and I just coarsely chop it up, and that's gonna go on the bottom of the plate when I serve it. So just like I say, coarsely chop it. I don't want whoever's eating this to have to work too hard cutting it up. So, maybe if it was a restaurant, I would just take one of those wedges of the cabbage and radicchio and put them in whole. It might make for a better presentation, but for this, I was going to sit down on the couch and watch a movie, and so I want to make it easy to eat. So here's the portobello. Stack them on top of each other and just slice them up. Now you're probably wondering where the ravioli is. That's coming next, but yeah, those beautiful portobello. I really enjoy portobello mushrooms. So now I'll start to make the sauce for the ravioli, which is pretty simple: butter and olive oil. Again, if you don't want to use the butter, you don't have to. And then there's more of that garlic and ginger. And we let that heat up. A little crushed red pepper. And then Calabrian chili peppers. These are pretty spicy, so you don't want to use too much, but just that little bit is really going to mean a lot to the flavor and color as well of this sauce. So, and then why not the other half of the lemon that I had to wake everything up. And then we just kind of let the butter melt down and everything lightly saute. Now, I love these. Not a fan of all of Wegman's fresh pasta, but the spicy rapini ravioli is really good. So we boil those up, and it only takes about 3-4 minutes, and they'll be done. There's some rapini in there, and there's some red pepper in there. Really good. So I'm also going to prepare a little basil, fresh sweet basil, to go in with my sauce and the ravioli. And then I gotta be honest with you, I forgot to record part of this, and that would be the part where I take the ravioli and the basil and put it in the saute pan with the sauce. So there it is, and now I grate the Parmesan Reggiano over the top. And again, this is right at the end. You don't want to put that basil in for too long, because you want it to stay a nice bright green. You don't want it to turn like dark green. And then just kind of toss that around, and we're about ready to plate. Oh, actually, creme fraiche. Why not? A spoon of creme fraiche just kind of gives a little more body to this sauce. So it just and it melts pretty quick. It's not like cream cheese or sour cream. It will just incorporate really quickly, and it just kind of gives a little smoother texture to the overall sauce that's on these ravioli. And then the portobello mushrooms, I tossed them right in there too. I thought about maybe serving them separate, but I thought they would benefit as well from a little quick bath in that sauce. So now we're ready to plate. Again, one plate or bowl. And I start with the cabbage and radicchio, try to get a kind of an even balance of it all. And that's a lot. So, if this was, again, this is like 2.5 servings. So I part them. So I have a little spot to put the ravioli and the portobello. And then spoon a little more sauce over the top of that too. And then I just lay down 5 of those zucchini on top, which again are a real nice contrast. The cabbage has a little crunch, but it's also soft as the raviolis that don't have a crunch. So it's just a nice contrast. A little sweet chili sauce, Tiger Sauce is the brand, over the top. And then that's it. We're ready to eat. Sit down, watch a movie. And man, I was pretty full after. I couldn't finish it all, but I got close. And it was a great meal. Gotta love cabbage and radicchio. And again, highly recommend those the vegetable ravioli from Wegmans. So hope you like it yourself. Again, if you don't want to make it, if you want to make it vegan, just don't use the Parmesan Reggiano or the butter. Just use olive oil. And but it is quite a meal, for no meat being involved. So hope that inspires you to maybe try a variation of this that might suit you. I mean, you could do things. You don't have to include the mushrooms if you don't want. There's a lot of different ways you could do it. But hope you enjoyed it. And again, I don't know if this will be the last cabbage dish I make for a while because I'm kind of getting cabbaged out. But you'll find that it's really fun to see how that flavor of the cabbage changes when you roast it. So hope you enjoyed it, and hope, like I said, inspires you to try something like this yourself at home.